Previously on Operation Dragoon. In July of 1944, the advance by Allied troops in Normandy has slowed significantly, mostly due to the lack of ports to obtain vital fuel and supplies. Operation Cobra has lost momentum, and the Allies are in need of an operation that will distract the German forces in the north, allowing for an easier breakthrough towards Germany. After being rejected by Allied command right before the D-Day landings in June of 1944, Operation Dragoon is reconsidered to fill this vital role. The French Forces of the Interior, often referred to as the French Resistance or FFI, played a crucial role in Operation Dragoon. For the initial invasion, the FFI provided many photos and detailed maps of the surrounding agriculture in southern France. This proved very helpful, as geography can often be the deciding factor in some cases. After the Dragoon landings, the FFI would continue to do everything in their power to destroy Army Group G from the inside out. This included blowing up bridges, capturing traffic hubs, cutting or sabotaging communication lines, and even direct attacks against weak German outposts. This was less than helpful for Army Group G. In fact, the cutting of communication lines and the FFI sabotage in general caused great confusion within the German ranks. The communication between Army Group G after the Dragoon landings was almost non-existent. As expected, General Wiese tried to launch a counterattack towards Le Mans and the Allied beachheads on August 15th. However, this went poorly as the German 148th Infantry ran into heavy resistance just outside Dragoon from the FFI, which had been reinforced by British troops from the 1st Airborne Task Group. The German 148th was to play a big role in the taking back of the Allied beachheads, but the 148th was stuck at Dragoon. The idea of an immediate counterattack on August 15th was then ditched. By August 16th, the renewed counterattack force, consisting of 4 infantry battalions, was launched. The troops of Army Group G launched multiple attacks. A two-pronged assault towards Le Mans was launched with hopes of breaking through and recapturing some Allied beachheads. Along with this, more attacks were launched to relieve the German 62nd Corps in Dragoon. However, already on the second day, the Allies managed to land quite a considerable force, frustrating the German counterattacks. The US 45th Infantry repelled German forces, simultaneously surrounding and capturing Les Arcs. The German forces retreated after a hard day's fighting. Also on the 16th, the German 148th broke out and finally arrived at St. Raphael, running into the 3rd Infantry Division there. The 3rd Infantry managed to repel these counterattacks and secure St. Raphael. By August 17th, the momentum of the coordinated German counterattack slowed to a halt. The Allies had successfully secured the beachheads and met up with the airborne units at Le Moyne, making an effective German counterattack almost impossible. On August 16th, Task Force Butler and the French troops landed on the secured beachheads, pushing in towards their objective. Task Force Butler headed north, while the French troops headed west, quickly reaching the key towns of Toulon and Marseille. Already on the 17th of August, there was not much Army Group G could do about the defense of southern France. On August 17th, Army Group G headquarters realized the helpless fight and the inevitable loss of southern France. Hitler decided to disregard his no-step backwards policy and admitted a strategic retreat north. All units, except the stationary fortress troops, were ordered to evacuate southern France and meet up with Army Group B along the Swiss frontier near Dijon. Hitler planned to pull Army Group G back as more forces were needed up north after the encirclement of German troops in the False Pocket. The retreating German forces found themselves in a pinch as they could not retreat fast enough to stay safe from the advancing Allied troops. The 45th and 3rd Infantry Divisions were pushing steadily north with great speed. By August 19th, US forces captured Bajors and Bagnols. French forces in the west continued to surround German troops at Toulon and Marseille in the north. In the northeast, Task Force Butler was advancing with great speed. Many of the defending German units were exhausted, leading to the crumbling of the defense force from Task Force Butler. On August 21st, the 157th German Infantry, faced with defeat, retreated, leaving a gap in the defense line to the east. To cover this mistake, the 244th Infantry in Marseille and the 242nd Infantry in Toulon were sacrificed to cover for the retreating Army Group G. They would buy critical time for the rest of Army Group G to retreat through the Rhone Valley, with the 11th Panzer and the 198th Infantry Division covering their retreat. The German forces in Marseille and Toulon were definitely a force to be reckoned with. After some fierce fighting at and around Jerez, the French forces moved up to take Toulon on August 19th. That same day, French forces passed Toulon and swung around, cutting off the highway between Toulon and Marseille, completely encircling the city. However, the city of Toulon would not fall easily. The German defenders put up quite a fight. However, after 7 days of fighting, the German garrison surrendered, leading to the complete liberation by August 28th. The battle for Toulon cost the lives of over 2,700 French men. However, the French managed to capture a little over 18,000 German soldiers. At the same time in the north, French troops approached the German forces at Marseille. One problem with an immediate assault of the city by French troops was the amount of French civilians in the city. The German commander in charge of Marseille refused to relocate the civilians in the city, leaving quite an obstacle for the Allied forces. However, the German forces at Marseille were exhausted from continuous skirmishes with the FFI forces poking at the city's defensives. The amount of ground the German forces had to cover to successfully hold the city was quite significant, leading to small holes in the German defenses. Eventually, the continuous pressure by Free French forces brought about the collapse of the German defenses. The result of the collapse was numerous strong points held by different units of the 244th German Infantry all over the city. However, on August 28th, the exhausted 244th Infantry surrendered. Unfortunately, German engineers with the 244th ID destroyed all port facilities in the Marseille harbor before surrendering. The German forces had over 2,000 casualties, along with 11,000 captured by Free French forces. All this was complete with the loss of just 1,400 French soldiers, and with this, the French army was back home. The French and Algerian units played a key role in the capturing of these two vital port facilities. After the capture of the vital ports of Marseille and Toulon, the Allies raced to catch the retreating Germans. However, because of the Allied headquarters' uncertainty about what to do, the Allies lost several opportunities to cut off the leading German 85th Corps in the retreat. Unbeknownst to the Germans, the Allies had decrypted the German radio codes, which revealed the German plan to withdraw. After realizing the open flank at Grenoble, Task Force Butler was ordered to assault towards the open flank. However, after some small German resistance, Task Force Butler was halted at Montlimer. It was revealed that Montlimer was directly in the way of the retreating German units. So, on August 20th, Task Force Butler was ordered to block the German retreat at Montlimer, then head north to take the city. Task Force Butler, along with elements of the 36th Infantry Division, pushed forward, and on August 21st, Task Force Butler captured the hills north of Montlimer. However, it looked like the hills of Montmiller was as far as they would go for now. The lack of fuel and supplies made Task Force Butler too weak to block the German retreat as planned. So instead, Task Force Butler was ordered to fire upon the retreating German forces from the hills above Montmiller until more reinforcements could be scrambled. Joining Task Force Butler and the 36th ID were soldiers of the FFI, which continued to harass the retreating Germans. After seeing the Allied buildup just outside Montlimer, General Weiss pulled up his 11th Panzer Division from the rear. The 11th Panzer, along with some Luftwaffe battle groups, managed to separate the US forces from their supplies just briefly before being pushed back by Task Force Butler. On August 22nd, more units of the 36th Infantry Division managed to meet up and reinforce Task Force Butler. However, the amount of supplies was not enough to directly attack the retreating column of German soldiers. Despite this, on the 22nd, the 45th ID captured and relieved the 36th ID at Grenoble. This left the 36th ID to fully commit to the capturing at Montlimer. On the 23rd of August, only small skirmishes occurred over the city. Neither power was strong enough to conduct a direct assault on the other. This left both powers at a stalemate for the time being. Also on the 23rd, Task Force Butler was officially dissolved back into the 36th Infantry Division after the consolidation near Montlimer. After a couple days of pushing hard, the 11th Panzer finally managed to reach the front on August 24th, 1944. On the 24th of August, the new consolidated American units tried to take the city. However, the newly stationed 11th Panzer stood their ground. That same day, the 11th Panzer threw a counterattack back at the Allied units. The 11th Panzer managed to take some of the hills overlooking Mount Lemur, along with capturing the Allied operational plans. With this new information, General Wees planned a major offensive to take place the next day. The 11th Panzer and the 198th ID tried to take more of the hills. Doing so would push back the US artillery, threatening the city. This attack ended in an Axis failure. The Allies pushed back at the assaulting Germans and retook much of the hills taken by Allied forces in the previous couple days. The 36th Infantry also managed to set up a makeshift roadblock, trying to slow the retreating Germans. However, this roadblock was captured later that night. After days of counterattack after counterattack and getting nowhere, the 36th Infantry Division decides to accept help from the 45th Infantry. The German forces did the same, gaining some reinforcements. Even after both sides received reinforcements and help, the stalemate continued for a couple more days. Both sides were continually frustrated with the lack of movement. The 36th Infantry Division had managed to mostly encircle the 19th Army. However, the 36th Infantry was also almost completely encircled by the 19th Army. This continued through the 26th of August, when General Dahlquist, commander of the 36th Infantry Division, was almost relieved of his position by General Truscott. General Truscott then realized the amount of stiff resistance and the horrible geography, leaving him in charge. As the day of August 28th came to a close, the evacuating German troops were able to sneak the last of their troops past Mount Lemur. The majority of forces managed to escape. What they could not bring, they destroyed. This resulted in 4,000 burnt-out vehicles and over 1,500 dead horses. Only after the main German forces had left the city did the Allies capture Mount Lemur. The city was secured on August 29, 1944. The Americans suffered over 1,500 casualties. However, the German casualties amounted to over 2,000 men, along with over 8,000 captured. Finally, after 15 days of hard, strenuous fighting, the occupation of southern France was almost complete, resulting in the majority of France being liberated. After the capture of Mount Lemur, it was just a race to see who could reach the Dijon line first. The 11th Panzer and some other straggling units raced to safety, with the 45th and the 3rd Infantry Divisions close behind. The German units made sure to destroy as much in their path, to give the Allied units the hardest time possible. However, even after destroying bridges and multiple pathways, on September 1st, the 45th Infantry managed to pass the retreating Germans and take the town of Maximix. The Germans, not wanting to risk another fight like Mount Lemur, launched a major assault with the 11th Panzer as the main assaulting force. This assault relieved units stuck at Lyon, letting them retreat. The 11th Panzer caused 215 American casualties and destroyed numerous tanks and vehicles. On September 3rd, the 36th ID captured Lyon and 2,000 German soldiers with it. They only managed to capture 2,000 POWs. The rest were back on track and ready to make it to safety. Americans, seeing one last chance to cut off the Germans, launched an offensive towards Brung and Brest. However, the 45th ID was not able to capture the city. Despite this, the 117th Cavalry bypassed the city, liberating Montrevel and Macbros. To the north, however, the 117th was soon trapped by the retreating 11th Panzer, resulting in almost complete destruction of the 117th Cavalry by the 11th Panzer. The escape route was reopened, and the Allies gave up the idea of cutting off the retreating forces. Over the next couple weeks, skirmishes between Allied and Axis forces occurred, but the 19th Army was not able to secure a defensive line. On the 10th of September, the 7th Army, that landed in southern France, met up with Patton's 3rd Army from Normandy. There was much celebration as France was almost completely liberated and Paris was secured. On September 14th, 1944, Operation Dragoon was halted, and Army Group G was able to hold a solid defensive line in the Vosges Mountains. The initial landings brought around 150,000 Allied men into southern France, with almost 600,000 landing by the end of the operation. These men were vigorously helped by the 75,000 ambitious French men of the FFI, ready to free their homeland. However, freedom comes with a cost. Over 3,000 Americans were killed or went missing, along with 4,500 wounded. The French suffered almost 2,000 deaths, along with almost 5,000 wounded. In total, the Allied casualties amounted to around 25,000. German forces present at the beginning of the invasion numbered around 100,000 men, along with almost 2,000 pieces of artillery and around 300,000 men present in all of southern France. The German forces endured over 7,000 deaths and 21,000 other casualties, along with around 100 to 130,000 POWs, or men captured by the Allies. This totaled to around 160,000 casualties. To put this into perspective, more German troops were killed or captured by Operation Dragoon than the battle for Tunisia in 1942 and 43. In general, Operation Dragoon was considered to be a great success by the Allied forces. Operation Dragoon opened another front and was able to inflict heavy casualties on the well-in-place German forces. The Allied soldiers participating in Operation Dragoon also managed to liberate over 500 square miles of France in just 4 weeks. This speedy operation also came at a cost. With the Allies so focused on liberating towns and cities, they missed many opportunities to cut off the retreating Army Group G. Soon after the landings, the Allies found themselves extremely low on fuel and stores. This was mostly due to the unexpected amount of land the Allies took in such a short amount of time. Allied shipping could not yet keep up with such an ambitious operation, not to mention the lack of harbors or ports. Despite this seemingly great success, Operation Dragoon was criticized by many other Allied commanders. Even after the operation, Winston Churchill still verbally expressed that he thought it was a waste of precious men and materials. Churchill realized the operation's great success in the liberation of France, but he was very discouraged by the amount of space Stalin's Red Army gained by this operation. Operation Dragoon is often referred to as one of the main reasons the Red Army beat the Western Allies to Berlin. Churchill continued to remind the Allied commanders after the invasion that Operation Dragoon and the loss of Berlin to the Red Army would have future consequences. Despite all the hate this operation gets, even to this day, Operation Dragoon was definitely needed and greatly helped the war effort. Capturing Toulon and Marseille provided 2 large ports to ship vital supplies and fuel to the fight up north. Just these 2 ports received over 900,000 American soldiers and almost 5 tons of material ready to be piped into action. After Germany lost southern France, they were pushed back almost all the way to their border. Even with Churchill's criticism, U.S. Army Chief of Staff George Marshall expressed no regrets and called Operation Dragoon one of the most successful things we did. British historian Max Hastings puts it this way: though Eisenhower is often and sometimes justly criticized for the lack of strategic imagination, he and U.S. Chief of Staff George Marshall were assuredly right to insist upon the concentration of forces in southern France. And with that, this 2-part series comes to a close. Operation Dragoon was so fun to make, but it was a very long series, so it would mean so much if you would like, share, and subscribe, and share this video with your friends. It takes a lot of work to put these videos out, so we would really appreciate your feedback. So feel free to comment any future ideas or any upgrades that you think would help the channel. And without further ado, that wraps up the video. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.